we got the West Blue, the top 10 pirates of the West Blue, told by yours truly. Now, at number 10, we have Don Sai. Don Sai is at number 10. He's the new leader of the Hapo Navy. He fought at Dressrosa. He fought against Lao G and beat him when his grandfather had, he's older now. So he was kind of fumbling there. And he was. You know. It ain't that he couldn't beat him, it was that he fumbled because he's old. You know? But Don Sai stepped in and, handled that fucking business real quick. You know, he has armament hockey. He uses what does he use? I'm trying to remember what the fuck he uses. He uses, you know, um, he uses martial arts basically. You know, I forget what they call it. I usually know it, but I forget right now. Number 9 though, that's Soul King Brook. The humming swordsman Brook of the Straw Hat Pirates. He's the musician. He's been there since Thriller Bark. He's cut people down with his soul solid sword, and also he can um, he can recoup. You can't kill this man really. He's already dead and he's already died. Um, I think he's the 6th most powerful shot in the crew. I know that's me in my rankings when it comes to that. He, fought Big Mom, and that was his biggest feat right there. I have to remember. I have to tell y'all that. He fought against Big Mom 1-on-1. He was cool with that shit. He was like, I need to get that poneglyph, my captain, and he's like, girl, I don't give a fuck. We're running that shit right now. And he was doing his thing for a little bit. So he's at number 9, but at number 8 we got Nico Robin, the double child of War, right? She had it rough growing up, right? Much like some other characters, she has a sad backstory. Her people were wiped out because they were trying to, learn things. You know, she survived, and they were gonna hunt her dick too. Luffy put the kibosh on that. She joined the crew, like for real. And then she, she started, hurting people too. Breaking their necks with her dough fruit, the fire fruit. She she likes to do shit like that. She broke Black Maria, and in that fight her dough fruit got a, like, I guess it's like an awakening, because she's like, now, demonio for, she used hockey in that, armament hockey feats, man. She has a little bit of fisherman jiu-jitsu under her belt, so she's, beating the people below her. um but she's at number 8, because at number 7 we got Capone Bege. Capone Bege was a mafioso boss, and then he, turned pirate. He said, "Cool, I'm gonna be a fire tank pirate." He, rose up the ranks, and he became, one of the fucking supernovas. He was at, um, Sabaody when, Luffy did the shit against, Charlos. He, broke his face essentially with his fist. You know, Beji was like, "We're getting the fuck out of here before the admiral comes." He's there to help Luffy out to try to kill Big Mom. He had a plan and other things, but when the shit fell, he was like, "Hey man, we gotta get out of here." And he was like, fighting to, get Big Mom off his dick, and he was, taking hits and all kind of shit. He was, it wasn't like he was like running away, like that. He was trying to like buy them time and other things. But at the end of the day, he knows he can't beat her, and he's like, we tried to poison the bitch, yeah, and boy, we out. He knows how to calculate his moves and do shit right. because he's daddy now too. So that was a thing playing on his head. Um, but yeah, I got him at number 7. At number 6, I got San Juan Wolf, the Blackbeard Pirates. He's an escapee from Impel Down. You know, he's like the biggest like human in the world. I think he they didn't even, they didn't even know this man was at Marine. They're like, he's like, hey, and then they're like, what the fuck? We didn't even see that guy over there, and he's like that big. He ate the giant fruit too. Like he was already like, yeah, he was already big, but then he ate the giant fruit. So now he's even more humongous. You know, this guy is tough for the people below him to bring down. I understand that. Now at number 5, I got Chinjao. Chinjao, he ain't like weak, man. He just if he can't beat his opponent like right away, um, he's probably gonna lose that fight. He's an older user of Conquer's Hockey, so he can use it still. And he was using it against Luffy and shit in the tournament, man. But time, wanes on him and shit, so he can only win if he can like he hits hard. He fights you with everything he has right away, and if he can't beat you with it, then he takes that out. That's basically how this man operates. He wanted to fight Luffy so bad though because of what Garp did to his head. Once Luffy fixed his head, he was like, "Oh shit, man, thanks." I was living like this shit for like 50 years until he showed up. Yeah. And he's like, don't even mention it. He's now like cool with Luffy and shit. But he was the former leader of the Half Navy. But since he's older and stuff, he gave to his grandson and shit. But he's still powerful. I think he's a conqueror. I'd say he uses it better than Kid and Ace. Even like that. You know, and he ain't even like that. You know what I mean? He's not the best conqueror, but he's better than those two at using it. So he's at number 5 on this list. At number 4, we got Jozu, Diamond Jozu. Diamond Jozu is the 3rd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates when Mihawk used his little slash, to like gauge how far away Whitebeard was to see what Whitebeard would do. Jozu just came up and threw that shit into the sky. He was like, "Nah, we ain't doing that today, brother." he told like I think that was kind of a telltale sign that he's like not that guy. Like these Mihawk fans think a little bit. It brought just a bit. Because he's the 3rd Division commander. Now he's still a fucking guy though because he ran up on Crocodile. He boom. He gave him he fucked him up. With that hit. You know. He jarred him a little bit. He was like, "Oh shit, this guy's here." He threw a piece of ice, trying to break the platform. Um, but his problem is like his mobility and shit. He's kind of fucking slow. Um, but he can, dish out some pain a little bit. He's the 3rd Division commander of Whitebeard Pirates. I give him some respect. He's at number 4, and he's from the West Blue. We have at number 3. We have Gecko Moria, or as we found out, he's from the Kozuki. Now, understand this about the man. He was a cool and other things, man. When he was a brat, they, allowed him to, they adopted him in and shit, basically. And then when Kaido came over, he was like, "Hey, man, let me, save these people." He was trying to be a hero and shit, but he got his ass whooped. So then he left with, Ryuma's corpse and his sword, and then he became that fucking, fat, guy that we know as Gecko Moria, who fought Luffy and, well, almost won, but I think that was just hype to like, only at that time he was, kind of an issue for Luffy, but after that, Marineford he wasn't doing anything, man. It's kind of sad his situation. Not because his actually necessarily like the saddest, but it's like this guy could have like worked out and learned hockey. You know, not like focus so much on his dough fruit. And he does do shit with the dough fruit, but he like needs and this is what I understand. So if I had the dough fruit, right, you need a strong shadow to put into a strong corpse. You know, you take somebody's strong shadow and you put that shit into a strong corpse, you like, there. But then you also have to make sure you yourself are fucking good too. Armament hockey, observation hockey, obviously he's not a conqueror, so he's gonna have to max that shit out. But he never did. That's why he was defeated. But I think he can beat everybody else on the list still. Um, so I got him at number 3. And then at number 2, coming out of the West Blue, red-haired Shanks. He was born in the West Blue on God Valley. He gave, Whitebeard sake from West Blue. He calls it his home. He knows that he's from. I don't have to say too much about him. He's one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea. He put Luffy on with the straw hat, to become king of the pirates on the pirate route. Shanks has conquerors hockey. Like, he might have already surpassed Roger. Like, that's some shit that people are gonna have to like understand and shit. But for right now, I'm gonna say that he's like basically on his level. But I don't know. That fight would be tough between Gold Roger and Shanks. Anyways, I said Shanks was number 2 person to ever come out of the West Blue because at number 1 is Rocks D Xebec. He's a pirate out of West Blue. He was a Conqueror's hockey user. He used a sword called Eclipse. That was his sword that he carried around on his side, and he liked to he liked to run shit on people, man. Like he was like he got his crew from dating back fights. These are like real fucking hitters, like Whitebeard, Big Mom, Kaido. Come on, son. He ran up the red line. He grabbed 5 kings, took them hostage. Then he cut down an admiral, and so he looked at Emu and said, "I'll be back," to take this shit over. He wasn't scared of shit. It took Gold Roger and Garp to defeat this man. Of course, he was Dami Reversi, but still, he was a tough guy, man. He was really fucking an issue. For anybody who was like against him. Yeah, man. He's at number 1 though. Shanks at number 2 and Rocks D Xebec at number 1. But be cool, call on the corner, and let me know what you think about that in the comments below.